The bone-chilling true story of a grandma. How she overcame trauma at 80. Never told until now. In the little town of Maplewood, where whispers danced on the wind and shadows lingered just a heartbeat too long, there lived a grandmother named Edna, who carried stories in her heart that could shake the foundations of reality itself. Everyone thought they knew her, the sweet old lady with silver hair and a smile that could light up the dimmest days. But in her eyes there flickered a darkness, the kind that hinted at a life filled with secrets that shook like thunder beneath the surface. Every evening, just as the sun spilled its last rays across the horizon, Edna would sit on her creaky porch, knitting her colorful yarn while gazing towards the gnarled trees that stood like sentinels, their branches twisted and claw-like, as if guarding the truths buried deep within her past. The children of the neighborhood often dared each other to approach her, their hearts racing, fueled by the legends that surrounded her. They whispered tales of strange happenings, unsettling noises near her home, and the night she supposedly chased away a sinister figure that prowled the streets. But was it just an old woman's fractured imagination? Or had she too wrestled demons in the dead of night? One stormy afternoon just before Halloween, a curious thing happened. The sky turned an angry gray, rumbling with the promise of chaos. Edna had ventured into her dusty attic, a labyrinth of forgotten relics, and stumbled upon an ancient trunk wrapped in cobwebs and mystery. With trembling fingers, she pried it open, revealing faded photographs that seemed to breathe and move in the flickering candlelight. Faces twisted in horror, clutching each other as if captured in their last moments, stared back at her. A fierce chill swept through the room like icy fingers. What had she unearthed? And this was just the beginning. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The storm raged outside as Edna clutched the photographs, a knot tightening in her chest. Memories surged like waves, crashing down on her with suffocating force. Who were these people? Why did the air feel electric? She could almost hear their whispers, laced with fear and desperation calling out from the past. Her heart raced, breath quickened, and for a split second, she felt like she was falling into an abyss. Was it time to finally reveal what had haunted her for so long? Outside, the wind howled louder, drowning the world in a symphony of chaos, but within that attic, a tale was begging to break free. Why had Edna kept this trunk hidden for so many years? And what was she so afraid of? As the thunder roared overhead, one thing became clear. Edna's story was just beginning to unfold, and it might just change everything. The attic felt alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for Edna to make the next move. With the storm rattling the windows, she stepped closer to the trunk as if it was a portal to another world. The photographs with their ghostly faces pulled her in. She recognized one of the faces. A young woman with hauntingly familiar features, framed by dark curls. That was her sister, Margaret. The old memories flooded back, writhing like shadows in the corners of her mind. Edna's heart ached with a mix of love and pain. Margaret had been gone for decades, swallowed by the void of their family's tragedy. The sisters shared laughter, dreams, and then that terrible night when everything unraveled. She could still hear the sirens blaring, see the blaze that consumed their family home, and the way it felt to hold her sister in her arms, terrified and trembling. Why had she never talked about it? Edna shook her head, as if to dispel the memories threatening to drown her spirit. This attic, furnished with her past, had been her sanctuary, a place to hide from hurt, but also the keeper of her secrets. The photographs weren't just remnants, they were echoes of stories unspoken, truths she had hidden even from herself. She pulled out a photo of a gathering, a blurred image of family and friends, all faces twisted into expressions of fear. Edna felt a chill slither down her spine. What had they been celebrating? Relief? Or had something sinister given rise to their terror? She could almost hear the laughter muted by a creeping sense of dread. Just then, a sudden crash of thunder echoed outside, jolting Edna from her thoughts. The attic door rattled in its frame, an angry reminder that the storm was raging on. But it wasn't just the weather that chilled her. It was the thought of what remained buried. Had she really escaped from those memories, or had they merely been sleeping? As she sifted through more photographs, a piece of paper slipped out, fluttering to the floor like a wounded bird. Edna bent down, her breath catching when she saw what it was. It looked like a newspaper clipping, the edges yellowed and frayed. With shaking hands she opened it, revealing a headline that sent icy dread surging through her veins. Mysterious disappearances in Maplewood. Yet another victim. Her pulse quickened and the room seemed to spin. She had heard whispers about the disappearances, old stories woven into the fabric of Maplewood. But this? It struck too close. The fate of her sister. Was it connected? The night deepened, shadows clawing at the walls, and Edna realized this storm wasn't just a storm. It was a reckoning. The past was crashing into the present, and she was caught in the eye of the storm. With a fierce resolve she stepped forward. Whatever had happened all those years ago needed to be unearthed. The truth wasn't a burden but a weapon, one she finally had the strength to wield. What had she kept hidden for so long, and at what cost? But as she clutched the newspaper clipping, not everything was over. An ominous creak echoed through the attic like a warning. Someone or something was watching her, waiting for Edna to uncover the twisted roots of her family story. And what would happen when she finally faced it? Edna's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the sound of the storm outside. The creak grew louder, stretching into a groan that seemed to resonate from the very walls surrounding her. She peered into the darkness, searching for any sign of a presence. The attic had always felt safe, a monument to her childhood memories, but now it was an unsettling trap. Instinctively, she clutched the newspaper clipping tighter, its edges biting into her palm. The faces in the grainy photos took on a life of their own, twisting in her mind. The missing persons. The echoes of her sister. Had Margaret been just another victim of the mysteries lurking in Maplewood? The thought twisted Edna's stomach into knots. She needed to know. She had to confront whatever darkness haunted her family. The flickering light from her flashlight illuminated the trunk, shadows dancing like phantom fingers, beckoning her closer. With a shuddering breath Edna knelt down. The tales of disappearances were woven tightly into the town's history, but was it just stories? Or was it something more? Something that reached out from decades past? Opening the trunk felt like breaking a seal, a way to unleash the ghosts of yesterday. She pulled out items one by one. Old letters, a tattered quilt, and another photo, this one of a disheveled woman with wild eyes, clutching a baby. Who was she? Edna felt a strange pang of recognition. The woman's face bore a striking resemblance to Margaret's. Igniting a rush of emotions suddenly, the clamor of the storm washed over her, thunder rumbling like a beast awakening. The attic ceiling groaned, and Edna's heart raced as if in tune with Mother Nature's fury. She rose, instinct demanding that she take action. But where could she go? A skittering sound caught her attention, pulling her away from the trunk. Edna squinted into the darkness, the flashlight beam trembling slightly in her grasp. The sound came again, this time clearer, like nails scratching against wood. She stepped back, the words of her grandmother's warnings echoing in her mind. Stay away from the attic. It knows things. Edna clenched her teeth. Had her grandmother known more than she let on? She felt betrayed, caught between the need for answers and the pull of long-buried secrets. The trunk wasn't just a treasure of old memories. It was a gateway to a past she wasn't sure she was ready to confront. The scratching noise grew louder, almost frantic. A chill raced along Edna's spine. Who's there? She shouted, but a part of her felt as fragile as the lighting illuminating her fragile frame. She didn't want to be afraid. Another crash of thunder shook the attic. Edna swallowed heavily, willing herself to stand firm. She focused on the source of the sound, edging closer, drawn by a force she couldn't understand. Maybe she would find the truth, or maybe it would consume her. And then she saw it, a shadow darting across the beams, quick, almost playful. Edna's breath hitched. Was it a figment of her imagination? Or a ghost from the past? A memory resurrected? The question loomed heavy in the air, dying out as silence descended once more. But with it came a chilling thought. What if the truth she sought was far beyond her grasp? What lay ahead in the depths of her family's secrets? The attic, with all its whispers and shadows, held its breath, as if in anticipation of what Edna would do next. She was on the cusp of discovery. Was she ready to embrace it? As the wind howled outside, the darkness beckoned, creeping closer, and Edna felt one last shiver crawl up her spine. What awaited her in the attic's depths? Edna's heart raced as she watched the shadow flit about, its movement more erratic than the storm outside. No longer just an echo of fear, it was now a living, breathing entity born from the very darkness she thought she could face. Her fingers quivered as she tightened her grip on the flashlight, praying its beam would cut through the oppressive blackness. "Show yourself," she called, her voice trembling as desperation seeped into her tone. Edna took a cautious step forward, the old wooden floorboards complaining beneath her weight. Just above the sound of the wind and rain, she thought she heard a whisper, a soft, urgent plea that sent her blood running cold. The attic had transformed. It was no longer a sanctuary of memories, but a space pulsating with unseen energies. The familiar smell of dusty cardboard and stale air turned rancid, mingling with the scent of mildew that invaded her senses. The trunk loomed behind her, a specter from another time, and she felt something magnetic pulling at her soul, urging her toward its dark depths once more. Swallowing her fear, Edna leaned down to peek into the trunk again. As if in slow motion, her hand reached for an old diary she'd spotted before. The leather cover was cracked, barely hanging on, a mere shell of its former self. Would the pages reveal her family's history, or would they twist it further? Cautiously, she flipped the diary open, the dry pages crackling under her fingers like brittle bones. Scrawled handwriting met her eyes, her grandmother's script, an unsettling familiarity. The first entry sent a jolt through her. "The attic remembers, it remembers everything." Edna's blood ran cold. What had her grandmother experienced here? What had been hidden away, smothered by layers of denial and time? Each line she read sent icy tendrils wrapping around her heart. The disappearance of townsfolk, the flickering shadows she now saw firsthand. It was as if the very ink spilled on the pages breathed life into her fears. As she read, the skittering sound returned, louder, accompanied by a faint whisper, "Help me." Edna froze, her pulse pounding in her ears. The shadows seemed restless, merging and splitting like a hunting pack, coiling around her feet. She felt the flicker of dread return, squeezing her mind. "Who are you?" she shouted, wanting to challenge the unseen force. "What do you want?" Her throat felt raw, yet she pressed on, searching for the truth that haunted her family. "Help me," the voice echoed again, desperation tinged with an unnerving familiarity. It was Margaret's voice. Edna staggered back, nearly losing her footing. Panic washed over her. It felt as though a void was opening up, threatening to consume her. The storm raged on, rain rattling on the roof like 1,000 desperate voices pleading for release. Edna's instincts kicked in, and she clutched the diary to her chest as she whipped around to face the shadow darting behind the beams. "What do you know?" she cried, frustration bubbling, the fear morphing into an overpowering anger. But the shadow didn't answer. Instead, it froze, hesitating for a heartbeat, before darting further back into the darkness, leaving her with more questions than answers. Edna squared her shoulders, determination burning in her chest. She wouldn't let this be the end. Whatever lay hidden in the layers of her family's past would be unearthed. She wasn't just looking for answers anymore. She was fighting to reclaim the lost pieces of her sister and her own identity. Supported by a flickering light, Edna took another step into the dark, her resolve solidifying. She would uncover the secrets of Maplewood's past, but in doing so would she risk awakening something far more dangerous. As the thunder shook the very foundation of the attic, a new shadow unfurled in the corner of her vision, catching her breath in her throat. What was it? And what would it uncover about her family that was perhaps best left buried? Edna took a deep breath, her heart thundering against her rib cage. With the diary still clutched tightly, she felt fortified yet tinged with fear. She needed to find the boldness within, to confront whatever lay in the shadows. The latest movement sent a chill down her spine, and the sudden rush of cold air brushed past her cheek like a ghostly whisper. "Enough games!" she shouted into the fading light, the anger in her voice surprising even her. "Reveal yourself." The attic responded with a low creak, the very beams around her vibrating as if agitated. A surge of terror shot through her. Maybe this wasn't just fear. Maybe it was something deeper. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck prickling, as if they too sensed the impending dread. She took a faltering step forward, her flashlight's beam bouncing erratically off the wooden beams and stacks of forgotten relics. Shadows danced playfully, but there was a weight to their movement, a sinister quality that pulled at her edges. Then, as if summoned by her declaration, the new shadow turned slowly toward her. It appeared more solid than the others, taking shape and forming a figure that was no longer an abstract notion, but distinctly human. Her breath hitched, caught in her throat. "Margaret?" she whispered, a wave of hope crashing against the walls of her fear. The spectral figure edged closer, its features barely illuminated under the flickering light. "Edna," the voice was faint but familiar, slicing through the somber atmosphere. "You shouldn't be here." Edna's pulse quickened. Was this truly her sister? Or some twisted version dredged from the depths of dark memories? "I need to understand what happened to you?" Fear knotted in her stomach, a desperation settling in once more. The figure swirled, a mist caught in the light, and the room grew colder. "You must leave this place," it whispered, the urgency palpable. "The attic remembers, but it keeps more than memories, it holds the sorrow." "Stop!" Edna screamed, her voice breaking as uncertainty gripped her like a vice. "Tell me what I need to know. You're not just a shadow. You're still here for a reason." With a sudden tremor, the apparition shifted, the shadows encasing it writhing like a tangled web. It flickered, momentarily revealing a face contorted in pain. "The truth, it will be your undoing. You can't bear what it uncovers." The flickering shadow was growing fainter, desperation clawing at her heart. "Wait!" Edna cried, stumbling forward, reaching out into the void. "Don't leave me like this." But the figure dissipated, vanishing like smoke into the air, and the attic fell silent, leaving Edna alone with her racing thoughts and the weight of the diary pressing against her chest. The echo of Margaret's warning clawed at her mind. What sorrow? What truth did this place possess that could destroy her? She steadied herself, shaking. If darkness lurked here, it was time to shine the light of truth on it. She flipped to another page, the words blurring as her hands trembled violently. Thunder boomed outside, shaking the structure as she began to read. The entries revealed perplexing layers, heart-wrenching tales of loss and anguish. But there was something more, mentions of a forbidden ritual, a name that resonated with danger. As she absorbed the chilling revelations, the attic hummed, an almost sinister vibration penetrating her bones. Edna's instincts screamed at her, a clear feeling that she was on the verge of uncovering something pivotal, something that the shadows wanted her to forget. Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in, and she recognized the voice repeating in her mind. "Help me!" Margaret's cry echoed again, warped, resonating with urgent intent. Edna's breath quickened as she sensed the air shift, an unseen force congregating at the fringes of her awareness. What if the answers she sought weren't just personal, but tied to the very foundation of Maplewood? And then, as the last tremors of thunder faded, a door creaked open somewhere in the depths of the attic. An unexpected glimmer of light beckoned from beyond the threshold. The choice sat heavy in her gut. Should she pursue the new path, or retreat into the safety of ignorance? With her heart racing and her mind swirling, Edna knew one thing for certain. The path she was on would take her closer to the heart of the darkness, and whatever lay ahead could shatter everything she thought she knew. Would she dare to step into the light? And what lay on the other side, waiting just for her? Edna stood there, her heartbeat a drum echoing in the silence, as the dim glimmer beckoned with an almost irresistible pull. Instinct fought with curiosity, and she felt strangely breathless, caught between the lingering specter of her sister and the promise of answers that had eluded her for far too long. Without hesitating, she moved toward the light, each step an act of defiance against the rising dread that prickled her skin. The door was ancient, worn, and as she reached for the rusty handle, it shivered at her touch, as if sensing her trepidation. With a deep inhale, she swung it open. The hinges protested with a groan, and she stepped into a narrow hall, its shadows seeming to breathe. Cracked walls lined either side, holding memories steeped in sorrow and secrets. Cobwebs brushed against her skin like ghostly fingers, sending shivers racing down her spine. The flickering glow illuminated something at the end of the hall, a faded portrait hanging askew. Edna felt a pull deep in her gut as she approached, the air thickening with a sense of impending revelation. Dust motes danced in the light, and her eyes locked on the face depicted in the painting. It was a woman's eyes as dark as the abyss, lips painted in a solemn line. Something about her felt familiar, almost too painful to recognize. Edna's breath caught, the air heavy with nostalgia and fear. Couldn't be, could it? Margaret, Edna whispered, the name echoing back at her, unsettling and hollow. Then from behind, there was a sudden crash, the sound of something heavy hitting the ground, echoing into the dark corners of the attic. Edna jumped, heart racing. She spun around, scanning the shadows, but found nothing. Just silence, oppressive and waiting. She turned her attention back to the portrait, the feeling of familiarity growing stronger. There was a name at the bottom in faded letters, almost illegible. As she bent down to get a closer look, the ground beneath her feet shifted like a living thing, causing her to stumble back. Get out! The voice surged back into her mind, Margaret's voice. It wrapped around her heart, squeezing tight. Edna shook her head, frustration rising. I can't. I need to understand. You can't just leave me like this. But the only response was the suffocating heaviness hanging in the air. A silence as sharp as shattered glass. She pressed her fingers against the portrait, tracing the outline of the woman's face. It felt cold, almost alive, tingling against her touch. What are you trying to tell me? She urged, desperation clawing at her throat. And then, as if the act of reaching out had pressed a hidden button, the wall behind the portrait trembled and shifted, a section of it retreating. Edna gasped as the secret threshold revealed itself. A hidden room, yawning open like an ancient beast. A chill swept over her, but the roar of curiosity drowned out fear. This was what she had been searching for. Stepping into the darkened space, she was enveloped by an overwhelming scent of damp earth and something acrid, like burnt offerings. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars that contained dark liquids and mysterious trinkets, a shrine to the past, to whatever had been buried beneath their family name. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, a small box adorned with symbols she recognized from the diary. It seemed to hum with energy, a heartbeat that pulsed with unspooled stories of grief and warning. Edna took a step forward, trembling hands reaching toward it, drawn by a force far beyond her comprehension. She hesitated, that familiar warning echoing in her mind. The truth will be your undoing, but what if undoing was exactly what she needed? With one last breath, she lifted the lid. The contents shimmered in the dim light, casting shadows on the walls that twisted and turned like wraiths. And then, without warning, the ground beneath her thudded violently, the whisper of voices spilling from the shadows. You should have never come here. Edna's heartbeat surged, panic clawing at her throat. The walls seemed to pulse as if they were coming alive. The very essence of the attic threatening to consume her. What had she awakened? And would she have the strength to uncover the truth about her family, or would the darkness swallow her whole? In that moment, as she fought against the pull of terror, the whispers rose, begging to be heard. Would she dare to listen, or would she let fear chart her fate? The moment Edna lifted the lid, a rush of energy rippled through the room. It was as if 1,000 unseen eyes turned to stare at her, dredging up ghosts of the past. The shadows thickened, swirling around her like a tempest, squeezing the air from her lungs. Get out! The voice had grown louder now, sharper, more insistent. It was not just a whisper anymore, but a furious gale howling in her ears. Edna flinched, heart pounding like a war drum. She stumbled back from the pedestal, clutching her head as panic fogged her thoughts. A compulsion surged within her, a thriving fear mingled with a dreadful curiosity. She forced herself to breathe, though each inhale tasted bitter like ash. But she couldn't ignore the shimmering contents inside the box. The desperate curiosity pulled her closer again. Inside lay a collection of small items. A tarnished locket, a crumbling letter, and a tiny delicate key, each whispering under the growing cacophony of agonized voices. Fighting against the gravity of the darkness, she reached for the locket first, fingers trembling as she traced it. The cold metal sent a jolt through her, sparking fleeting memories of her childhood. It had belonged to Margaret. Edna's eyes widened as realization crashed over her. Why was it hidden? She murmured, as if answering herself. But then the lights flickered violently, and the pressure around her intensified. Shadows recoiled and expanded, and the voices, oh, the voices, rose in a terrifying crescendo. Take it! Take it! They screamed. The drumbeat of despair was relentless. With a fierce gasp, Edna dropped the locket. It clinked against the floor, and the sound echoed ominously, leading to an oppressive silence that settled heavily on her shoulders. Ignoring the growing dread clawing at her sanity, Edna snatched up the letter, crumpling the edges in her hands as her heart raced. It was fragile, yellowed with age, the ink dwindling into shadowy outlines. As she opened it, her eyes skimmed across the faded words. What she read made her stomach twist violently. It spoke of betrayals, promises broken, and a sinister pact made by her family long before she was born. No, it can't be true. The shocking revelation sent her mind spiraling. She glanced at the tiny key next. What locks did it hide? More secrets? Would it bind her deeper into whatever darkness haunted them? Before she could think, the room began to tremble. The shelves rattled and the jars clinked ominously, the liquids inside morphing into grotesque shapes. Edna felt entrapped, the air becoming thick and electric with something ancient and dark. Leave this place, Edna. The voice of her sister again, the urgency making it unbearable. A sense of protective instinct wrapped around her heart, igniting a spark of rebellion against the chaos enveloping her. But as she turned to flee, her feet rooted to the ground like heavy stone. The shadows slithered closer, tendrils reaching out as if to grasp her. There was no escape. Tell me what happened, Edna screamed, her words drowned out by the mounting noise. Her desperate plea hung in the air, laced with dare and defiance, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the chaos ceased. The room plunged into an eerie stillness, shadows retreating as a single specter emerged, a vision of Margaret, ethereal yet radiating pain. Only the key can unlock the truth. Margaret's voice was but a whisper against the cold stone, though the weight of it could crush. The air trembled, an electric pulse igniting Edna's spirit. She couldn't deny it. The truth waited behind every fiber of that key. Give me the strength, she murmured, eyes searching for clarity in the chaos. But could she trust the voices? Was the truth the very thing to tear her apart? As she grasped the small key, a sense of urgency seized her. The danger was far from over, and answers loomed like shadows just out of reach. What would be revealed if she dared to unlock the past? Could she withstand the weight of her family's darkness, or would it end her once and for all? As Edna stood on the brink of destiny, the walls hummed with tension, waiting to see if she would embrace it or flee into the night. Edna's hand trembled as she clutched the tiny key, its coldness biting against her palm. The air felt electric, pulsing with an unnameable threat that dared her to continue. She glanced back at the spectral figure of Margaret, who remained poised before her, a silent sentinel cloaked in sorrow. What do you mean, Margaret? What truth could possibly be worse than what I've already uncovered? Edna's voice cracked, desperation threading through her words. Margaret's gaze was unreadable, a flickering candle flame caught between two worlds. The key to our family's ruin. You must choose wisely. The past is both a curse and a blessing. The shadows stirred again, furious at Edna's hesitance. A cold wind gusted through the room, rattling the jars along the walls and making her shiver. She could feel their hands, dark, insistent, reaching out to ensnare her. But she was caught in a web of determination, fueled by love and fear for the sister she thought she'd lost. Stop! She shouted at the shadows, knowing they wouldn't listen but feeling a thrill of rebellion. I won't be a prisoner of your lies any longer. She stepped forward, her heart hammering against her chest like a bated breath. With a flash of courage, Edna inserted the key into the lock of a nearby chest that loomed out of the shadows. Instantly a deep chime resonated, clarifying both sight and purpose. She turned the key, its mechanism groaning against years of dust and hesitation. Suddenly, the lid burst open, emanating a blinding light that illuminated the room in ghostly white. Inside the chest lay an array of items. Photographs cluttered the space, faces of ancestors she had never known, all staring back at her with haunting familiarity. Each image was etched in pain, stories of heartache and sacrifice captured in their eyes. Edna felt dizzy, her heart sinking into a tide of sorrow, but it was a small, battered journal that caught her eye, its pages worn and rugged, as if they had weathered 1,000 storms. As she pulled it from the chest, memories spilled forth, whispers of laughter and despair echoing through her mind. With shaking hands, she opened the journal to find her grandmother's scrawled handwriting, confessions seeping with regret and hurt. My dear Edna, it began, the family's legacy is tainted. And it is our own choices that chain us to the past. Her stomach churned at what she read. Tales of desperation painted in blood-red ink, revealing a web of deceit that had entangled generations. The pact her grandmother had made with dark forces echoed Margaret's warning. The family's history twisted into a tangible, living monster whose fangs threatened to bite down on her now. Edna's breaths quickened as wave upon wave of shame and guilt coursed through her. The truth was a double-edged sword, and she could feel its sharpness slicing into her very soul. Would she be able to bear this burden? Could she rise above the mistakes etched into her family's legacy? Suddenly, a deafening noise shook the room, sending a shower of dust cascading from the ceiling. The shadows charged toward her, encircling like a storm. In that heart-stopping moment she had a choice to make. Would she confront the terror that had haunted her family, or succumb to its overwhelming darkness? Do it, Margaret urged, her voice strong and fiery. Only you can break the cycle, Edna. Edna's resolve was tested, her mind gnawing on the edges of despair. Clutching the journal tightly, she steeled herself against the oppressive dread. The shadows roared in a violent crescendo, pressuring her to turn back, to relent. But this was it, the moment of truth. The culmination of whispers had led her here. A pivotal choice that could change everything. As her heart surged, she took a defiant step forward into the abyss. I will face the truth, she vowed, locking her gaze on the pulsating darkness. And just like that, the shadows halted, their fury ignited, revealing the path ahead. What awaited her on the other side? Would embracing the truth free her family from its torment, or would it consume her in ways she couldn't fathom? The air was thick with anticipation and fear, each heartbeat a countdown to the unknown. She was ready to confront what lay in wait, ready to unlock the chains that bound her. But an even darker realization pulled at her. Was the truth truly her ally, or had she unwittingly forged an alliance with the very darkness she sought to escape? As Edna braced herself, ready to confront the legacy that defined her, the flickering lights cast eerie shadows, waiting for her next move. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Edna's heart raced as she pushed through the veil of shadows, each step driving her deeper into the unknown. The darkness rippled, swirling like a sentient entity, brimming with anger yet oddly compelled by her defiance. Margaret's eyes shimmered in the dim light, her presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Remember, Edna, she whispered. The truth may be fierce, but it holds the key to your freedom. Edna's breath hitched. She could feel the weight of her grandmother's legacy pressing against her, 1,000 stories suffocating her in their urgency. Was she ready to face them? Suddenly the gloom began to shift, revealing an insidious landscape of memories. Fragments of her ancestry materialized in the flickering glow of family gathering. Laughter mingled with sorrow, a scene of betrayal masked by the warmth of love. Each moment disconnected but achingly familiar, like echoes from a distant time, whispering secrets just out of reach. Then, a figure emerged, a woman enveloped in shadow, her face obscured but unmistakably tied to Edna's bloodline. An icy chill brushed against Edna's skin, recognizing the raw pain etched into this woman's expression. You've come to uncover the truth? The shadow asked, her voice a ghostly echo. Then you must understand your family's betrayal first. Edna's eyes widened. Betrayal? What do you mean? Your grandmother traded freedom for security, the figure hissed, stepping closer, cloaked in the memories of betrayal that had led to this moment. The very pact she made is the root of our curse. She turned away from the light. Edna's head spun. The journal raced through her mind, its pages stained with the weight of decisions made long before she was born. Could it be true? Had her grandmother chosen darkness? As doubt wormed its way into her heart, the figure pointed toward the chest she had just opened. The truth awaits in your grandmother's words. But be warned, what you find may change everything. You're now part of this legacy. Edna felt a surge of anger. I don't accept that. I choose my own path. The shadows quivered, reacting violently to her defiance. The temperature dropped around her like a coffin closing. Defy us and you'll abandon your family to eternal torment, the figure threatened, her eyes blazing like burning coals. The choice is yours: embrace the truth and bear its consequences, or drown in ignorance like those before you. Blood pulsed in Edna's ears, competing with the rush of uncertainty. She could turn back, slip away into the comforting haze of ignorance. But the thought of her sister, of Margaret's unwavering spirit, locked her in place. "I won't let your darkness dictate my life," Edna cried out, a fierce fire igniting her resolve. "I will face it." The air crackled like electricity as her words reverberated through the room. The shadows recoiled momentarily, retreating from her determination. "Very well," the figure snarled, her form flickering like a candle in a storm. "You have chosen. But remember, every truth has a price. And some demons do not relinquish their grip easily." Edna took a deep breath, heart pounding in her chest. She reached for the journal again, hands shaking as she flipped through the pages with renewed urgency. As her eyes danced across the inked confessions, one sentence blazed through the ink like fire. "The blood of betrayal runs thicker than water, and only the bearer of its weight can rewrite our fate." The shadows coalesced around her as she pieced the truth together. But a new worry settled in her gut. What if revealing the truth unleashed something darker than she anticipated? "Margaret!" she shouted, searching for her sister's spirit in the swirling chaos. "I need your strength." But silence met her call. The storm roared in response, growing more ominous as if to mock her desperation. Feeling cornered, Edna faced the figure once more. "What do I have to do? How can I rewrite this fate?" With a slow and sinister smile, the figure leaned closer. "You must court the very darkness you seek to escape the shadows." Hissed, and Edna could feel their power tightening like a vice. Gripping the journal, she prepared for the trial ahead. What awaited her on this treacherous path? Only time would unveil the true cost of her choice. As Edna stood breathless, in the embrace of the shadows, she felt the weight of generations bearing down on her like an ancient stone. The whispers swirled, clawing at her mind, trying to ensnare her once more. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, fists clenched, determined not to show fear. The figure loomed closer, the ghostly light shifting with each intent motion. "To rewrite the fate of those who came before you, you must understand their choices. You must become the bridge between their darkness and your light." With those words, the shadow lifted, revealing a sprawling scene teeming with ghosts of her ancestors. Edna could see the old family home, flickering with candles, laughter echoing against the walls, all tinged with unspoken dread. She recognized faces twisted in agony, like marionettes caught in a macabre dance. "See them," the voice urged, "but do not forget who you are. You are not them. You are the legacy they feared, a warrior of light in the fog of despair." Edna stepped forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. Each ancestor writhed with stories she could almost taste, stories of betrayal, love and loss, their souls hanging in a delicate balance between regret and redemption. As she moved through the shadows, the images began to crystallize, wrapping around her heart like a heartbeat of their own. Suddenly, a figure stepped forth from the murky edges. It was her grandmother, eyes filled with pain but softened by love. "Edna, my dearest," she whispered sorrowfully, "the pact was not just to save our family, it was made in desperation and fear. We thought we could protect ourselves, but it ensnared us in darkness." Edna's breath caught in her throat, the truth slicing through her like a hot knife. "Why didn't you tell us? Why hide it?" "Because fear dictated our silence. But with your courage, you have a chance to change it all." The shadows shifted, responding to Edna's turbulent emotions. "Trust in your heart. Embrace the light you carry," her grandmother urged, "and wield it against the darkness that consumes us." Gathering her resolve, Edna reached for the journal, flipping through pages of raw emotion and harrowing confessions. Here were accounts of sacrifices made and lives sacrificed. The very pact that cursed them all pulsed within the ink. Whispers wove through the air. "Help me," they begged again, echoing her sister's cry, a plea from the depths of despair. "Enough," Edna cried, overwhelmed but determined. "Whether we chose right or wrong, I will stand not just for myself but for all of you." The shadows shrank back, almost in shock, as if they had never considered such a bold refusal. With a steady hand, she seized the tiny key again and aimed it toward the heart of the swirling darkness. "You will not define my future," she shouted, thrusting the key forward. The shadows recoiled, letting out a mournful wail as if the very air had crackled with the release of pent-up energy. "Together we will rewrite our fate," Edna declared, her voice a fierce roar against the maelstrom. As she swung the journal wide, words ignited from its pages, illuminating the attic with brilliant light. Memories burst free, soaring into the atmosphere like unwanted echoes, becoming liberated spirits. Light cascaded down, breaking chains and filling the space with a brilliance that burned away the shadows. Colors danced around her: greens, golds, and blues. Each hue vibrated with forgotten joy, spilling warmth and life into the attic's dismal confines. And then the ghosts began to change. Faces transformed from twisted agony to peaceful acceptance. The burdens of their past finally lifted. Edna watched tears spring to her own eyes. This was a release, a rebirth after a long haunting night. Feeling light as a feather, she turned to Margaret's shimmering specter, now smiling gently amidst the joy around them. "You did it, Edna," she beamed, her figure pulsating with radiant energy. "You freed us. You freed our family. Thank you for staying with me," Edna whispered, her heart swelling with love. As the shadows finally receded, the storm outside calmed to a soft patter of rain, the attic steadying under the warm glow of resolve. She felt the anchoring presence of her family, their past no longer a curse but a history intertwined with hope and redemption. Edna took a deep breath, the air sweet with relief, knowing her fight had brought peace. That deep ache of loss morphed into a warm embrace. She would carry these memories with her, not as burdens but as lessons learned, and just like that, she turned back into the world reborn and resilient, carrying the truth as a badge of honor. The door of the attic creaked open, inviting her into the bright new dawn of Maplewood. As she stepped into the light, she looked back with gratitude, whispering a promise to honor her family, not through silence but through truth, love, and courage. The shadows no longer haunted. They had become part of her journey, a testament to the strength and vulnerability, lifting the weight of a forgotten past and revealing the immense love that always lingered beneath. Now, this is where the real story begins for all of us. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending, and be sure to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.